5:30 business meeting of the Douglas County Commission. We want to welcome those of you who are here with us in person at the old courthouse and also those who are joining us online. Some of you may be here to provide public comment. The Douglas County Board of County Commissioners welcomes public comment in advance. We thank you for following these procedures. Each action item on the agenda will offer an opportunity for relevant public comment about the topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item you're here for comes up for discussion. Comments relating to agenda items are welcomed after the board has had an opportunity to discuss the topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item you're here for comes up for discussion. The Board of County Commissioners will invite comments on these topics. The Board of County Commissioners will invite comments on topics not included on the agenda during general public comment after considering the consent agenda. This is a time for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but related to the general business of the Douglas County Commission. We'll first call on folks who are here in person, and then we'll turn to online commenters who are here with us tonight. If you are on Zoom, please plan to use the raise your hand function, and when the time comes, listen for staff to call your name. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask everyone to give their full name and Douglas County residence for our meeting minutes. All public comments should be directed to the County Commission. Campaigning for public office is not allowed. We also reserve the right to mute and remove any speaker who is vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. The public should also know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not represent the views of the Douglas County government. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen. Please know that online participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet during tonight's meeting. Materials are published online for your reference also. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube page and website. Tonight's agenda, we have only one item on our consent agenda. Then we'll do general public comment. We have one item on our regular agenda, which is the treatment and recovery lease and operating agreement. Then we'll finish up with appointments, commissioner and administrator miscellaneous before we adjourn. We'll start with the consent agenda. Commissioners, would either of you like to pull our one consent agenda item for further discussion? No. Would anybody in the public like to pull our one consent agenda item for further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I would take a anyone online, Sarah? No, okay. Would anybody like to make a motion? Nope.
I think we have a hand raised, and I believe this person wants to speak about the item on the agenda, but I will move them into the panel to confirm that.
Yeah, so the item on the consent agenda is for the approval of accounts payable. So
Okay, that hand was lowered.
Okay, great.
Great.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve consent agenda item 1.1.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. We'll move on to general public comment. Do we have anybody here for general public comment? This is for items that are not on our regular agenda. Welcome. Make sure you state your name.
Oh, Sherilyn Wells.
Cheryl, you can put your name on that sheet when you leave.
I put it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This last young Native American woman that passed away in a tent over there in North Lawrence, that people think she might have been dead for a day or two, has really bothered me. And I'm involved with kind of knowing who is passing away here homeless. And I will tell you, 3 of the last 6 people that have died here homeless have been Native Americans. And I went back and I was figuring out, say over decades of time, about 20% of our unhoused that have died here have in fact been Native Americans. And you know, I looked up and the percentage of Native Americans here is maybe under 3%. You know, some of us, I know that you're talking about diversity and inclusion, but some of us have tried off and on for decades to say that we felt that people of color were not, seemed to be not especially included in the care system, as one might hope. And I would think that this would be very concerning. I mean, it's great to talk about diversity But it doesn't seem to me, commissioners, that this community is exactly achieving it. There's something other that's sort of a related issue to me. Not too long ago, I'm volunteering at this little tiny peer group that has hardly any funding. And a homeless outreach worker came over there and dropped off somebody that I found out was addicted to methamphetamines and had been violent with their own family, and that's why they were roaming around homeless. And I called Bert Nash and I said, well, you know, I don't think this is the best idea. And they said to me, well, aren't you open to everybody? Well, we're this tiny little group. We don't have the capacity to take care of people like that. And it has been my experience that larger organizations in this town have not exactly respected the boundaries or the limitations of smaller groups. And that they seem to think that people they didn't know what to do with, that somehow they could sort of pass them over to us when we have not much money and very little standing in the community. You know, I feel like in my time as being a peer provider outside of the system that I have, it's over.
Cheryl, you've reached your 3 minutes.
Okay, that we were given very mixed messages and we should be advocating together.
Thank you.
Debated for a while what I was going to say when I come in here, but I do want to let everybody know you're going to notice that they're not going to enforce that little name thing with me, and they're not going to enforce a lot of things with me because they're not required, and I've proven that. I don't know what Commissioner Reed's been doing the whole time that Sherilyn Wells was up here talking about death in homelessness, but there's no way that you were taking down every note word for word. And I don't think that was what was going on, but I just filmed you just focusing on something else the whole time. You made an improper biased assumption about something, and you spoke out of turn and disrespected a lot of people. I'm going to bring this back to time, place, and manner. At a memorial is not the time. It's not the place. And your manner was inappropriate. I thought about doing some videos about it and maybe putting out one to put a call out to all the bridesmaids and all the birthday parties that you've been to throughout your life and all the different weddings and things to find out how many other photographers you've interrogated. I decided to come in here instead, where it is the time and it is the place. And my manner can be conducted any way I choose, because we as the people have a First Amendment right. Shannon used her First Amendment right in an inappropriate time, place, and manner. And yet she's had people arrested out of this room for expressing their rights. Your commission has. Don't shake your head. You need to just sit there and take this because you have it coming. Shannon was at the memorial for the homeless woman who died. That's why it's disappointing that she's not paying attention. Don't start with
Michael,
me.
you need to address the
I can look.
commission.
Okay, commission. I want to tell you, Patrick, that Shannon was at a memorial where a homeless woman had died. When she got there, I thanked her for arriving, Patrick. I've seen Shannon in public in a couple other places where we've had gentle conversation because it's not the time, place, or the manner to be conducting that. I don't follow her to her home and harass her. I don't even know where she lives. But she showed up to this memorial, claimed to have grew up with the girl. Nobody at the homeless camp ever saw her at the homeless camp to visit this girl, but she decided to come up to me and interrogate me about whether I had permission to film. Woman, I helped pay for that shit. You can go to hell.
Thank you, Michael. Any other public comment here at the courthouse? Thank you. Any online, Sarah?
Again, Rick Kagan had online. I want to make sure your public comment is related to general public comment and not to the agenda item.
That is correct. And thank
Okay.
you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I wanted to speak to the county's interest in ongoing discussions about renewable energy. In particular, want to encourage the county to move forward with any plans to implement alternative and renewable energy projects. And I want to speak to some of the myths, I'm sure, which may have kind of reached your desk by now that, for example, solar projects would drive property values down. And there's no evidence to suggest that that is the case. Perhaps you've seen reference to a 2021 study that found no measurable impact on property values adjacent to solar projects. In fact, solar projects bring economic benefits to the community, including additional tax revenue. There's also discussion about negative impacts on soil and prime farmland, but been a lot of studies indicating that farmland under solar projects can be used for crop production, and then when those projects are decommissioned, they can return productive use of the fields back to their original use. If there were concerns about the negative impact on the environment and wildlife, solar energy is among the lowest impacts on the environment. It emits no air or water pollution, requires no drilling or mining for fuel, and emits little sound, and creates no hazardous byproducts. So again, I just want to reinforce the value of these projects to our community. I've heard notions that solar panels are not safely disposed of, but solar panel recycling technologies that have been implemented return about 95% of semiconductor material and over 90% of the glass in the panels. So again, commissioners, I hope that you will give reasonable consideration to projects that come to your attention, and be mindful of the myths that are circulating about the negative impacts of solar and other renewable energy projects. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rick. Any other public comment online? All right. We'll close public comment and move to our regular agenda item. We have one agenda item, and that is the treatment and recovery lease and operating agreement. Sarah?
Commissioners, I'm very excited about tonight and our opportunity to review the operating agreement and lease for the Treatment and Recovery Center. A lot of work has gone into the last several months, but really accelerated in the last few days to meet the aggressive timeline that the county and Bert Nash as partners put forward before the community and the commission to finish our work and to be ready to open the Treatment and Recovery Center. I can proudly say that that agreement came together today. And we do have a brief presentation plan to walk you through it, but given that it was not made a part of the official packet, and the commissioners have not had a chance to review it, I wonder if you might like an opportunity to have an executive session to review it briefly and then receive the brief presentation from staff and answer questions so that you can at least have some familiarity with the document before we proceed, and then we can decide how we want to approach it from there. But we could certainly do the presentation and then go into executive session. It's whatever the commission prefers.
Sarah, can you mention that tight timeline and why we haven't had a chance to read that yet, just so that people know that, a lot of work has gone into this and this was not the anticipated timeline, but we're still hoping to try and keep things moving. Can you talk to that?
Well, yes, and in February, we put before,
I just mean like today's timeline with these
What do you mean?
documents. like the
I
last
maybe I
48
don't understand your
hours.
question.
So we have a lease agreement in our
Yes.
packet because that met the reporting timeline. But we don't have the operating agreement in
Okay.
our packet because that came in at what,
1 o'clock today.
So I want to kind of talk through like how we get that out to the public as well as getting it to us.
So I think there's a variety of options we can do that, but until it's finalized by the commission, I have not added it to today's packet because literally we got it done at 1 o'clock. So what I'd like to do is have an opportunity for executive session for the commissioners to review it. And then obviously there can be discussion modifications to it if that's what the commission decides. And then we can decide, obviously, we can make it a part of an official document. There's a variety of ways to do that and we can walk through that later, but I kind of feel like we should make sure we know what agreement we're talking about before we decide how we're going to disseminate it. Go ahead. You got to turn on pull the button towards you. There you go.
Commissioners, John Bullock, County Counselor. I know you're aware of this. I just want to make a comment for the benefit of all concerned that the purpose of executive session would be to consult with your lawyer regarding matters deemed privileged in the attorney-client privilege. Any evaluation, discussion, consideration of the merits or advantages or disadvantages of entering into these agreements would occur in public session. We would not be allowed to have the three of you debate the merits of this in public session or take any action. That all would have to happen in this room. Again, the purpose of meeting an executive session would be to just get some legal advice on the contract terms if that's what you're inclined to do.
And John, just to make sure I'm clear, if we make a motion, I would ask for this executive session because we haven't even seen the agreement. And so it would be our attorney-client privilege right there to talk about what's in the agreement. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, I could review with you what the legal terms of the agreement mean. In terms of, you could ask questions about the legal interpretation or effect of those things. Then again, if you were to want to discuss those, and we would have a full presentation
Right.
publicly. And to follow up on something that Sarah said, and this is the product of a lot of work by staff and council. And, as Brooke Azier, our outside healthcare counsel, is here today, and as she said, deals like this often do go down to the wire. And there were a lot of complex details involving complicated matters of healthcare, business administration, real property insurance, and everyone's worked really hard to get this across the finish line. And so it's just, we didn't have anything to show you until a little bit earlier today, but there's been consistent work throughout.
Thank you. Just checking in with my fellow commissioners. That sounds like a plan.
I think that sounds like a plan. I did get a chance to briefly run through it. I am not an attorney, so there are things in there that I would have missed, but I would love any opportunity we can to kind of grasp the full agreement before we're having that public discussion. Normally that would happen because we would have it in our packet for several days to ask questions about it if we needed to on our own. But since we don't have that, rather than slow down the process, I think an executive session helps us meet a goal.
So John, can I ask you to put together a motion for us and we can put a time limit on it?
Yes, the motion would be, I, Commissioner, move that we recess into executive session to confer with the county counselor on matters that would be deemed protected by the attorney-client privilege concerning legal agreements related to the Treatment and Recovery Center. We will return to open session in this room at X o'clock, whatever time you decide. And then in addition, Commissioner, you would include your legal counsel, your county administrator, your assistant additional legal counsel, Brooke Azier, and the Director of Behavioral Health Projects, Bob Transky.
Okay, how much time, Sarah, do you think we'll need? I don't think this will take long, and I want to consider all those members of the public who are here and waiting while we have this legal counsel real quick.
20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes. So we'll meet with the motion as John articulated. I'll make that motion to return at 6:10 here where we might likely have a presentation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 You all can sit and wait. We can't start till 6:10. Sorry. Yeah. And we're back and we are not taking any action out of our executive session. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to walk us through a bit of a presentation on the lease and operating agreement for the Treatment and Recovery Center.
Thank you, commissioners. I'm extremely proud to be able to present to you this operating agreement and this lease for the Treatment and Recovery Center. You can't hear me? Oh, sorry. All right. I'm going to share my screen. This coming to this day has been a tremendous amount of work on the part of lots of people in this room. I'm incredibly proud of these documents, and I think the community should be proud of the work that this community has done over the last several months. Here we go. So this is a status update on the discussions between Douglas County and Burt Nash on the operations of the Treatment Recovery Center. I'm proud to report that we have agreements for the commission to consider tonight. Tonight, we're going to just do a brief overview of the key terms of the TRC operating agreement and lease. We're going to just refresh the timelines for the phased opening of the center. We're going to give you some highlights of the data dashboard and key performance indicators that will go in to help us monitor the accountability and performance of this asset and this service to the community, and just some highlights from the 2023 and 2024 budget. I'm going to turn this over to Brooke Azure or John Bullock, County Council, is going to do this piece.
Thank you, Sarah. John Bullock, County Councilor. Also here is Brooke Azure. As we've advised you previously, Brooke is a partner with the law firm of Folston Skeefkin and a specialist in healthcare law, and has been advising us closely along the way and has played a major role in the negotiation of these agreements. She's also here to help field any questions. As Sarah mentioned, there's been a lot of work. There have been many meetings. Professional staff and legal counsel have worked hard to get agreements ready for consideration by this body and by the Burt Nash Board. Once this body and the Burt Nash Board have approved those agreements, then they can be executed. And I'll review some of your options at the end. We're really talking about two agreements, commissioners, and my plan is to really hit these at a very high level, but of course, we're happy to dive deeper on any particular topics as you may like. There's going to be an operating agreement and a lease. The operating agreement is the agreement by which Burt Nash Community Mental Health Center will operate the Douglas County Treatment and Recovery Center. The term of the agreement, or the length of it, is somewhat phased in the sense that we have an initial operating term through the end of this year. Then there is a presumptive one-year term for 2024, followed by successive one-year terms thereafter. I can discuss those in more depth, but each one of those terms would then be subject to effectively a renewal here in front of this body as we move forward. As I indicated, Burt Nash would operate the Treatment and Recovery Center. They would be functioning as a crisis intervention center, which is a creature of state law, and as a certified community behavioral health clinic. I know you've had a lot of briefings about those things, so I'm just mentioning those. We can talk more about those if you like. The scope of the operating agreement defines the scope of services that will be provided in a lot of detail. Bob Tryansky, the Director of Behavioral Health Projects, will review that in more depth for you, along with the phasing of the opening that is also a part of the operating agreement. The funding that will go into the operation of the Treatment and Recovery Center comes from various sources, including the county. Sarah will speak a little bit more about that later, when she talks about budgeting. I will just highlight that a large portion of the funding coming into this center is from Medicaid dollars by virtue of Bert Nash's qualification to be a certified community behavioral health clinic. There will also be money coming in from commercial insurance, perhaps some other third-party payers. There will be county funding. And then there's also funding that's coming from the state Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services. Again, Sarah will hit some of those details, but because the funding mechanisms are described in the operating agreement, I wanted to mention them as part of my summary. There is a lot of additional provisions in the agreement that are customary to an operating agreement for a healthcare facility pertaining to such matters as insurance, licensure, accreditation, other sorts of ancillary type services and infrastructure. That's all described in the agreement. I won't annotate that at this time, but certainly happy to answer questions. As part of the county's administration of this agreement, we will be receiving lots of information from the operator, including budgets, financial reports, key performance indicators, data metrics. Those things will basically give us information about the quantity and quality of services that are being provided. Bob Triansky will review those in more depth for you just a little later in the presentation. As we've discussed with you previously, it's staff's intent to ask this body to convene a TRC advisory council, which may have that name or some other name. The intent would be to convene various community participants who take care of the population that this center will serve, as well as consumers of those services and lived experienced individuals. As you would expect, Bert Nash readily agreed to participate in that body. And I, without wanting to speak for them, I think they look forward to being part of that community-wide effort. And we certainly would look forward to having them be part of that effort. There are a few final items that Bert Nash is working to close out prior to opening day. We're reviewing those with them, and I don't see any reason for concern. We can certainly talk about them, but those will not be obstacles to getting the center open from legal standpoint of view, although there are a couple of items to be closed out. I'd like to say a few words about the lease. I'll pause if there are any questions at this point, or if you'd rather wait. Okay. Seeing none, I'll just talk briefly about the lease. It's a lease and occupancy agreement. It's got a lot in it, but it's really a pretty standard commercial lease for a facility like this. There's a little bit of healthcare gloss on it, but it's pretty standard stuff. The term of the lease is for 5 years. It provides in very specific terms that Bert Nash will use the building. They will take care of the building. They will take care of the county's furniture and equipment and things that we've caused to be installed in there. They'll maintain insurance on the building. It's just the kind of things that any tenant would be expected to do. And that's not been a contentious discussion at all. The lease will be coterminous with the operating agreement. So if for some reason the operating agreement is terminated, the lease terminates. And conversely, if the lease terminates, the operating agreement is terminated, which is why from a legal standpoint, we think those need to be executed at the same time. We wouldn't do one tonight and one in a week or something like that. It may be that we were able to provide the lease to you a few days earlier, but again, our legal advice would be to have those be executed at the same time. So if there are no questions on those agreements, subject again to the further presentations, and I can revisit this at the end if you like. There are several options that the commission would have this evening. One would be to approve the lease and the operating agreement. If you do that, you could direct the county administrator to execute those. We would ask Brooke and her counterpart at Bert Nash's legal team to, agree that the final signed version is ready to go. And then we could have that executed by Commissioner Kelly as the chair, or Sarah Plinsky could be directed to execute that. That would be in the form of a motion tonight. Another option would be for this board to approve in a conceptual sense all the things that we've described and ask that the agreements be brought back on a consent agenda next week. In theory, they could be reviewed and, if approved, executed by the Bert Nash board in the meantime. A third option would be to re-agendize this for next week and just take no action tonight. And I suppose if there's a fourth option, which is if this body is inclined not to approve these agreements, then you would just need to advise us what your intentions or requests are of us. As a final footnote, I will mention that we do have an agreement in the works with KDADS for the state funding. I think it's largely complete. We've been in dialogue with Bert Nash and KDADS about that. That'll come back to you at a future meeting for your review and approval. It's not here tonight, but it is very much related to the operating agreement. It will be part and parcel of the way that this facility is operated. So I wanted to be sure to mention it. I think with that, commissioners, that would conclude. Brooke, do you have anything you want to add? I think that would conclude our legal summary unless there's any questions. Of course, we'll be here throughout the presentation for any further follow-up.
So just to review what we talked about the last time we were here, Bert Nash provided a really clear roadmap to opening that was clearly aligned with the feedback that the community gave and the commission shared in terms of wanting to open well, wanting to make sure that we were fully prepared to offer services as we brought them online. And so we have sort of a staged opening that begins with the urgent care facility opening next week, potentially. The urgent care facility or the urgent care portion of the TRC is a community walk-in clinic. It's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. It will be open weekends from noon to 4. It will be open 365 days a year, regardless of what the holiday schedule is. And it offers the services that we've talked about. That unit would be open for 30 days before the crisis or the observation unit, the 23-hour observation unit comes online, and before the stabilization unit comes online. And then as we move through the phases, the capacity and the number of patients that we feel we will be ready to receive increases. So when the observation and stabilization unit comes online, capacity of 10 patients in the second phase, or what's actually the third phase, capacity at 16 patients. Ultimately, we could, based on the budgets that we've prepared, that Bert Nash has prepared, strive to be able to accommodate 24 patients between the two units, but based on the volumes that we see once we start to open and get in there. These are some more specific details that are actually in the agreement in terms of phase to phase. So the first phase, TRC is open, as we said, urgent care receives community walk-ins. Patients will be seen by a provider within 1 hour of arrival at the facility. Bert Nash intakes will also be completed at TRC. Bert Nash will provide a written plan for follow-up communication and care coordination with outside providers. Patients seen at the TRC will be able to return to the TRC for follow-up care as needed. Everybody acknowledges that access is a challenge. It continues to be a challenge across our system, our healthcare system. And so a patient who is seen at urgent care can return to urgent care as they wait maybe for a follow-up appointment that might take longer than the person would need. Bert Nash will have a mechanism in place to track and report time to follow-up appointments. Bert Nash will track and provide monthly data reports to the county, including time to first appointment, referrals, and return to follow-up at TRC urgent care. All of that available beginning day one, which we would hope would be sometime April 10th, sometime next week, ideally. Phase 2 would be in place by May 25th. I need to tell you that Bert Nash has done so much work, one, to become CARF accredited, two, to be prepared to do the CCBHC model and to offer the range of services. And there are so many advantages to some of the things that have happened as the result of a little bit more time, a little bit more planning, and a little bit more preparation. One of those is that Bert Nash is bringing on a new EMR. And that EMR, I think, as you'll see, allows for all of us to be able to understand with unbelievable precision and detail what the patient experience is, how efficiently the TRC is functioning, and how Bert Nash is doing as a certified community behavioral health clinic. I have been so grateful to the team at TRC, so the Burt Nash leadership team, for the way in which we've been able to talk about setting bold aspirational goals to make sure that we do meet what we talked about last time, which is this meeting the needs of the most vulnerable, the most complex individuals in our community. I remember when we first started visiting crisis centers around the country, one of the doctors that was running a facility that we liked, he said, we really have four elements, four principles to what we're trying to do. And as I listened to Dr. Houston share his perspective on this and to have conversation with the chiefs, it kind of came down to, and we've got good language to clarify and make sure that when we get stuck or if we get stuck, but principle number 1, take the patient. Principle number 2, take the patient. Principle number 3, take the patient. Principle number 4, just take the patient. We have really, I think, gotten to a point where we've got shared purpose, shared clarity on this, and that will start to come online by May 25th. Phase 3 is really a transition between taking voluntary patients in the crisis observation unit and the crisis stabilization unit, and then being prepared to accept all law enforcement referrals, all EMS referrals, being able to manage and be able to accommodate patients who are on an involuntary hold. So those are the 3 phases, and we would hope that everything would be completed in terms of capacity, accessibility, preparation to offer that full complement of services by July 17th. Burt Nash is confident that they'll be able to do things sooner, and we would have no reason to not expect that or not to hope for that or have aspire to that. That is what they're striving for. Within the first months of operation, the Douglas County TRC Advisory Council will be convened. We've started having conversations about how we open and make sure that people in the community who are interested in being a part of that would have the opportunity to share with the county that they want to be a part of that. So process for selecting the members of that, the structure of that, the charter for that will be a process, and we've given ourselves some time to breathe into that process. Within the first 6 months, I'm looking on my screen, so I didn't just jump ahead on your screen. First responder drop-off acceptance rate would be greater than 90%. Side door turnaround time would be less than 10 minutes. The dashboard metrics, which the great thing about this dashboard that we're going to share in a minute is that it was built and modeled on some of the substantial work that LMH Health had done in providing a really great window into what happens in the emergency department. So as the TRC comes online and starts to serve that population, what we would want to see, right, is the number of patients going to the emergency room sort of shift. And what's interesting is I looked at the metrics in that dashboard from the end of the year, and in the behavioral health plan that was started in 2018, we set a goal of seeing the number of emergency room behavioral health crisis visits decrease by 20% as a result of the TRC coming online. We've done a lot of work together. We talk about that a lot. And what you need to know, I think, is that we've actually achieved that number in the emergency department before the TRC has come online. But we actually know what that number is today or as of January 1st, and that's really going to allow us to see how impactful is the TRC in meeting these objectives. So we want to talk a little bit about key performance indicators, and I found this like clever little video. I couldn't resist not using this since we've been talking about the roadmap to opening and the roadmap to the ideal crisis system. But what I want to do is I want to turn over and I'm going to just share at a high level the dashboard that and huge kudos to Stephen O'Neill, to Timothy Nolte, to the IT team at Burt Nash, to Amy Finkeldye and the quality team, and to Patrick and to Dr. Houston for sitting in and through and being as detailed as possible the process of putting this together. I think when you look at this, we can be pretty sure that we're going to know what's going on in the TRC and what we need to pay attention to as we try to promote continuous quality improvement. So the first tab of this dashboard has a series of 23 key performance indicators. What you see in this dashboard is a couple of things. You'll see metrics, things we're going to count, things we're going to track. Then on some of the lines of this dashboard, there are targets related to those measures. Those are key performance indicators. And those targets are related to Stephen, is it 5 pillars in the CARF accreditation, which would be service, efficiency, satisfaction, access, and people and finance. So as you look at this particular tab of the dashboard represents those metrics which we will track and which we will share publicly. In reports, in presentations, these are the things that we agree that everybody in the community should be taking a look at, and we should all be holding ourselves accountable to asking questions about how are we doing and what can we do to get better, or are we on target, or do we need to make some adjustments, or what questions aren't we asking? So Douglas County and Bert Nash agreed to a set of metrics that we want to track that would be publicly facing. The next tab on the dashboard toward the bottom is a set of additional metrics that KDADS requires. So those two, we are completely aligned, but you will see that like percent of referrals accepted, Bert Nash is striving for greater than or equal to 95%. The percentage of people who should be discharged to the community, greater than 90%, greater than or equal to 90%. It's interesting that I think this is a great example of a place where Bert Nash has been extremely bold in their aspirations. And I want to say that because it may be that we don't hit these targets right out of the gate. And I want everybody to understand that the purpose of having a target is to be able to sort of set yourself to a point where you can improve if possible, you can make adjustments if needed. And so these targets don't mean that if you don't hit one metric or another, the game is over and you're failing. And anybody who runs a large organization understands that. I don't want to sound like I'm pandering or just sort of teaching elementary school. But I think it's important for everybody in the community to understand that these are aspirations, and Bert Nash has been really bold. As we look at the percentage of people discharged to the community, you know, in that grid of the ideal crisis system, crisis centers tend to discharge about 70% of people to the community. Bert Nash is striving for a higher level of accountability, or they're setting a higher goal. Good for them. One of the reasons for that is that the access center or the urgent care facility is not always a part of a crisis center. That sort of crisis triage is where things start. So those are the metrics that we're going to track with KDADS and then report monthly with KDADS as you see before you. We also, Sarah, if you want to go over to the milestones tab, this represents a timeline and all of the key sort of milestones that we have sort of laid out in the phased openings of the TRC. If we go over to TRC business functions, that shows you a couple of things that I'll call your attention to. Line 8, performance relative to approved budget. Bert Nash as an organization strives to meet a goal of operating within 5% of their budget. So they are carrying that goal over to this set of metrics and dashboard key performance indicators, and revenue neutral relative to expenses. So those are the TRC business functions. This dashboard will be submitted by Bert Nash every month. We will share it with KDADS every month. And the last piece on this dashboard that I want to share with you is the HR summary. So we asked Bert Nash to be able to sort of share with us how are things going in terms of staffing. Staffing is a major challenge in healthcare. Staffing is a major challenge in just about any field of endeavor right now. And so this set of sort of tabs that Tim and Stephen developed helps us to see how many people did we say we want to have on the workforce, and where are we with respect to that. And so the numbers have started to be filled in this exhibit that's attached to the agreement. But that is kind of the example of the data dashboard. It's a lot of work. It was done really not really quickly, but quickly for the amount of work that was done, and we're incredibly grateful for that. Do you have any questions, commissioners, about key performance indicators, measures of success?
First, I'm just really appreciative of that work, and I'm really excited what our community is going to learn about ourselves as we start to kind of gather some of this data. So I appreciate all the work that went into creating this and all the work that will go into keeping track of those metrics, but I expect us to learn quite a bit from it. You have the 2023 goals in there. Will the 2024 goals be set kind of in conversation as we kind of learn what's going on, what we're capable of, where our gaps are? Those come later, or will they expect to be identical to the 2023?
That's a good question, and I think that's a question for conversation both between the county and Bert Nash. And then as we have a community council, I think that's a conversation to also raise with them, or the conversation will come back there. You know, you can only, if you're hitting 90% or 90%, 5% is your target. There's not a lot of room for improvement. That's one of the conversations we had actually with Commissioner Brown, because the KDAD's sort of mechanism is they want to see continuous quality improvement. And so we were like, well, if your law enforcement turnaround time is less than 10 minutes, like, do we have to strive for 3? Well, we'll always strive to get better, but that's pretty good. You're hitting sort of the same standard of excellence as anybody else in the rest of the country who's doing this work. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
The next, more questions? So my Zoom just crashed. So I'm trying to reconnect to
The next
move on.
slide.
So maybe while you're restarting there.
Right.
Sarah, I just, to our friends at Bert Nash and to Bob, I mean, this is exceptional in my mind. I mean, I get a little misty-eyed when I talk about data, because I think it really helps us make really good decisions and really honor it. So I do want to thank Bert Nash. This was something that we've been working on for a long time to figure out what that is. And I think for our community, this is what our community expects. We want to see how our dollars are being spent and the results of those dollars. So I know this was new. I'm reflecting back to a conversation that I had with Patrick very early on about how hard this was going to be. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you put into that. Both you, Bob, and our friends at Bert Nash. So thank you.
All right, I think I'm back online, commissioners. Theory. See here. Loading. No. I'll try again.
Be a good time for everybody to take a wellness moment. Just breathe. It's okay to have nothing. It's all right.
Are you in panel?
I'm not in the panel. I'm not on Zoom. Can be.
I can try to talk commissioners through it while in theory, I get reconnected. It keeps kicking me out.
Do you want me to boxes and we'll
Mhm.
tag team?
Let's see if I come back in. Should tell me if I come back in. Commissioners, we want to just give you a brief overview of the 2023 financials associated with this project and the 2024 financials. The spreadsheet that I was hoping to show you is really tremendous work in terms of monitoring and tracking anticipated revenues and expenses for this project. And all of the credit of this goes to Stephen O'Neill at Bert Nash for his incredible work on trying to pull together all of these disparate pieces and the forecasting that he has done for this. What we were going to outline, if my internet was connected, and what I would show you is that the total estimated expenses for the TRC in 2023 are just over $8.8 million. Of that, personnel related costs are about 5.2. So that gives you a sense of just how staffing intensive this project is. In addition to that, Bert Nash and the county are anticipating between 7.7 and $7.2 million in additional funding coming to this project. That funding comes primarily from the CCBH PPS rate that we've talked about extensively associated with this project, third-party commercial insurances, and the state of Kansas KDAD's funding for this project. That is what makes up that dollar amount. The county funding then remains anticipated to be between 1.1 and $1.6 million. So the operating agreement in front of you has a cap of that amount. We've gone into extensive detail in terms of how the money will flow from KDAD's through the county to reimburse Bert Nash for those expenses. That will, and I really can't stress enough how important the KDAD's funding is to the success and operations of the center. In 2024, we anticipate that those expenses will change to the total anticipated costs are total there. The
10.4.
$10.4 million, and the county's contribution will increase to $2.8 million. 2.8. I can go into more detail, or Stephen O'Neill can certainly recite this from the back of his hand in terms of what's gone into this work, but really just tremendous amount of detail and anticipation into this project. We appreciate that there is a lot of unanticipated issues. It's going to face Bert Nash and the community as we bring the center online. We understand that cash flow is an issue in terms of trying to get this center up and running before reimbursed revenues can be received. And that is something that we're taking into account in terms of how we are funding the flow of dollars that comes to Bert Nash so that we can adequately meet the timelines before the commission. And unless the commission has other questions, I can go back, see if I can get back in and finish out the PowerPoint. Yep, that's. I would guess I'd turn it back to John to sort of just restate where we're at in terms of the agreements and stand for any questions the commissioners have. Our friends and colleagues at Bert Nash are also here to answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Just to recap, we have the operating agreement and the lease. Staff and legal counsel have agreed to the form of those agreements. The commission could approve them tonight, in which case we could provide execution-ready copies to the chair of the commission or the county administrator, as you may direct, to be signed tomorrow. Presumably Bert Nash, if their board approves, would also execute and we'd be done. If instead you would rather approve the concepts as discussed tonight and have those items returned to you on a consent agenda next week, we can do that. That would have the effect of delaying the opening a few days. But that's certainly an option. A third option is to re-agendize this for next Wednesday. Or if you decline to take action tonight, we'd ask as staff that you direct us of what you'd like to do.
I would throw into that then we would anticipate that within a few weeks, we'll bring back to the commission the KDAD's agreement. So that is a part of the agreement, but will not be signed tonight.
And at the risk of belaboring the point, if you do elect to approve the agreement tonight and we execute it tomorrow, we certainly would publish it on the website. It could be brought back in a county administrator's report. It will be available to the public, to the media, to everyone. It would just be expedient, if you will, to approve it tonight, but it would be a matter of public record, of course, from this moment forward.
What does execution ready require from the copy that we were able to see tonight? What are the anticipated changes? I imagine they are minor, but can you just give me an idea?
We need to gather all the attachments.
Got it.
There's several.
Yeah, the words in the agreement will stay the same. The signature block, which is currently set up for Commissioner Kelly, if the commission directs Sarah to sign on behalf of the county, we would change that. The substance would not change. Unless, of course, the commission directs us to go negotiate different terms, in which case it would. But we've got an agreement that's in final form from the standpoint of staff and Bert Nash staff and all the council.
Any other questions for staff? I want to invite Patrick Schmitz if you'd like to come up and just share your thoughts on all this.
Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to be here tonight. You would have thought with all the work, I would have spent some time making some prepared remarks. And so I'm just going off the cuff. We've been literally running to get to this finish line. And so I did not frame up some really nice comments. So I want to thank you for your patience and your support in us doing this work. I want to thank the team from the county, staff and legal counsel for working with us diligently, sometimes for many hours in a day, multiple times throughout a day, over the weekends and the evenings, to get this to where we are at today. And I'm incredibly honored and proud to be associated with my team at the Burton Ash Center and all of our supporters who have pushed and prodded and encouraged us to keep doing this work, and the incredible work of the TRC team and the leadership team at Burton Ash for putting aside other things so that we could get this accomplished. We know how incredibly important this is to our community. It's incredibly important to us. And so we're just really honored to be connected to this project and take a lead role here. But it's been because of the partnerships, not only all the partners here in this room tonight, but many who are not in this room tonight. Maybe they're online, but we're here today because of all of that work throughout really a decade and a half of individuals being involved in that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Patrick. Before, any questions for Patrick? Okay, thank you. Before we open it up for public comment, commissioners, I think it might be good to have a little bit of a conversation about the options that John presented, because I think it'd be sort of unfair to the community to listen to them and then have something, and they might have something to say about that. I'll just share, this is not an agreement that we're just seeing for as we might say, we're just seeing it for the first time, but we have been very involved. We've had a number of executive sessions on very specific parts of it. We've had lots of meetings, and 2 weeks ago we were here and had a fairly lengthy meeting about what parts of the contract, and we had a chance to ask questions about it. So I'm feeling comfortable with authorizing Sarah to sign the contract, but I wanted to check in with other commissioners, obviously, and hear your thoughts on that.
I agree that we've been involved with the process, and I am seeing in the agreement the things that I had hoped to see in the agreement. I don't have any substantive difficulties with what we have before us. My only hesitation is just getting it in front of the public, because public really loves to read legal documents, especially lengthy ones. But as long as we can satisfy that, I would hope that we would be on target for signing and opening on the dates that we had set aside for that.
Ditto. Really, I think that there's no reason. There's, our executive session this evening gave us an opportunity to make sure we asked any questions which we may have asked sort of leading up to today about that document. And I feel like there's no roadblock to moving forward, and it's truly just a formality. So I want to make sure that we keep the train going.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said, Commissioner Willie, about wanting to make sure that the public has access to it. There's also a tension of this is way overdue to get open, and there's that pressure that we need to get it open, and I am confident in our county administrator's ability to evaluate that contract and feel like it meets our expectations. We've been very clear in quite a number of meetings on what we want and what we expect from it, and have confidence in her. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll open this up for public comment. If everybody'd like to, I said everybody, I don't think everyone's going to provide public comment. If anyone would like to provide public comment, we welcome you to the microphone. Make sure you sign in, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Kelly, if I may, John Bullock, County Councilor, I just want to make sure that that legally, I believe the commission is clear to approve this agreement tonight, as long as the commissioners understand what's in it, are aware of its contents. And we're not going to go back as staff and change anything. I mean, I believe from your comments and the comments of the other commissioners, you've looked at the terms, you're familiar with the terms. What you would be approving tonight would be what's in the agreement.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Belinda Davis, a Lawrence resident, and I'm speaking on behalf of Justice Matters this evening. We want to thank and celebrate everyone from Burt Nash, county staff, council, the commissioners for their commitment to work together to finalize this lease and operating agreement that will allow the TRC to open. We are well aware of the long hours and the endless meetings that have occurred to get to this point. We recognize that there may be some challenges along the way, but we also have faith that you will find a way to resolve them in a timely fashion. And we look forward to the success of the TRC and the people you will serve. Thank you.
Just a reminder, no applause, please. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll check online. Any public comment online, Sarah? No hands raised. Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back up for the commission for any more comments, questions, or motions.
I'll just add to my comments from before, and many sentiments that we've heard this evening, which is it's been a bit of a long road, and there has been countless hours and people engaged in this process. And that comes with a whole host of feelings and perspectives. And I recognize that and exhaustion sort of being a shared one. And I recognize that as we are rolling into the actual provision and delivery of these services in the community. I just want to appreciate the degree of intensity that has been required by this process. And the pressure that has been applied by this commission on behalf of this community to make sure we are doing our due diligence and figuring out how to get this right, and to how to be bold and aspirational, to Bob's points earlier. And I'm grateful that we have community partners who are willing to join us in that, and that we have a community mental health center that is going through transition process of their own, and some real fundamental changes to how they operate and how they've operated in the past, all of which that I think are going to be extremely beneficial to our community and that will create a real sea change. And so I'm excited to see how that plays out, and to Belinda's comments just a moment ago, that there will be challenges to meet. There will be roadblocks that we didn't know were around the corner, that we're going to have to figure out how to move and how to work around. And I think that this process over the past 6 to 9 months of due diligence and really getting to this place will be fundamentally beneficial to all of us, that we will have mechanisms in place and mutual trust that's been built and strengthened that will allow us to meet those challenges and figure out together what resources we have to pull on, and what opportunities are in front of us to course correct along the way. And I think that's what a good process does. And I think that's what accountability looks like. And so I'm just really grateful for that. And it gives me a lot of hope about what's to come. And knowing that it won't just be a easy thing to celebrate, that there will still be work to be done, but we've really set ourselves up for success, I think, and just appreciate the community and organizers in the community and advocates in the community holding us accountable to answering tough questions, asking tough questions, and being reflective both within our own organization and within the partnerships that we hold at a community-wide level, so that we know how we're doing and we're always striving to do better. I'm happy to make a motion. Commissioner Willie, I see you turning your mic on. Go ahead.
I'll be brief. So I think we have a great agreement, and it sets up for accountability to the community, accountability to the public. I also want to call on the public to also support, not just to hold accountable, but also to come alongside Bert Nash as they take on this large project, but also the individual staff will be providing care in the treatment and recovery center. It's new work, it's hard work, it's really difficult. Personal support will be important, moral support will be important. So it's not just a question of holding accountable, it's also a question of what is our responsibility to the folks that we've asked to step up to this work. So I call on everyone to participate with that.
Yeah, I'll just make a few comments. I'll try to keep it brief. The easiest thing that we can do is say, we'll figure it out. And that's why we hired lawyers, right? Because sometimes when we say we figure it out and we get to the end, we didn't figure it out and we didn't take the time to make it right and get it set. That said, I do want to recognize that why for some of us, we've been engaged with this for maybe months or even a year. There are those who have been involved for a very long time and have really put out tremendous work and tremendous effort. And, you know, Commissioner Thelman is here and it's really impressive the work that she's put into this moment. And Commissioner Gahn and Commissioner DeRusso, this has been a long time coming. There have been lots of tough conversations, and we should be proud as a community that we can have tough conversations, that we can grow from tough conversations, that we can make something stronger and better by being in a place that's uncomfortable. We as human beings don't like to be uncomfortable, but in order for us to grow, we have to be uncomfortable. That's what's required. And I see Cindy Ulick here, who's the chair of the BHP board, and we've had uncomfortable conversations and they help us grow. And I think it's important to recognize that just because we have challenges and difficulty, that doesn't mean we aren't better for it on the other side. And hopefully our ego and our pride and our own humility will allow us to step forward and say that that was tough. We can still approach each other with kindness, because there are going to be more aspirations that we have as a community that we have to navigate through, and they're going to be challenging conversations and tough times. This is just one. And so I'm very proud of the agreement. I'm very proud that Bert Nash stepped up to the challenge that was continually pushed and continually came back to the table and continually worked hard, that their board, though frustrated, continued to put pressure on their executive director and us. I think that's just fine. That Justice Matters was involved and put pressure on us and then wanted to find out more and found a way to do it. So, you know, thank you to the community for continuing to make diamonds out of a really tough situation. But the last group I want to thank before we have a motion is our Douglas County staff. There were people in the community who told me that there was no way this could get done on this timeline, and that it was false to say that we could do it, that we were setting others up for failure. And they stepped up time and time again, hour after hour on the weekends, extra time, had those tough conversations and kept listening to us when we said we need more. And I'm just very grateful for all that work from our staff. You are excellent at the job that you do. And to Bert Nash, you're excellent at the job you do. And to our community, you're excellent to get to this point. That's really impressive. Stop.
As Commissioner Reed, I move to authorize the county administrator to sign a facility lease with Bert Nash Community Mental Health Center for the Treatment and Recovery Center from 2023 to 2027, and an operating agreement with Bert Nash Community Mental Health Center for the TRC at a cost not to exceed $1.6 million in 2023.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to appointments. Commissioner. You guys want to stick around for appointments, or you want us to give you a minute or two to go out in the hallway and chat. Oh, wait a minute. Flub something up. We did not take public comment on that. We got so caught up. Oh, no, we did. We did. Woo, okay. I got caught up in stuff there. Hi, Patrick. Of course.
Yeah, we'll just trace in the minutes. Take a small break.
What's that? Just a couple of hours. Commissioners, do you have any appointments this evening? No. Okay, we'll move on to Commissioner Administrator Miscellaneous. We usually start with Sarah's memo.
Thank you, commissioners. My memo is in the packet. Couple things I wanted to point out on it. First of all, some big news in the courthouse. After 32 years of service, our county appraiser, Steve Miles, has announced his retirement effective June 23rd. Over half of Steve's service has been as county appraiser. I've had consultation with Steve and his team. My plan is to appoint Brad Eldridge, who is our deputy county appraiser, as interim appraiser until we have time to conduct a search. As you all know, June is a pretty busy time of year for me. And I think Brad is more than capable to serve as our interim director. So that appointment is by commission. So we'll be bringing that motion back to you as we get a little bit closer to appoint him as interim county appraiser. And we really wish Steve the best on his retirement. In addition to that, Zaina Fada, our management analyst, who you all know pretty well, is leaving Douglas County for a new opportunity as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Program Coordinator for the city of Topeka. Despite our sentiments, we are very proud of Zaina and very sad to see her go, and we will take her phone calls. But we are very sad that she is leaving us, but we are really excited for her to have this new opportunity. Commissioners, next week, I also want to note, it's not in this memo, but I'll add it to future memos. We're going to take May 31st, which is our 5th Wednesday in May, off. So we will not have a commission meeting on May 31st, and August 2nd, which has got 5 Wednesdays in August. And that's the first Wednesday. So I've added that to our commission calendar. I'll put it on this memo. It just kind of a lot of things happened this afternoon, didn't get a few things in the memo. I also wanted to mention and maybe call commissioners' attention to Carrie's latest newsletter. This was a big week across the courtyard at the Judicial and Law Enforcement Center. As of Monday, our court system and all of our justice partners went live on the state Odyssey system. This has been a huge effort, years and years in the making. It is a collaboration of so many partners in that building and outside of that building, as well as the state of Kansas, to make this happen. They shut down operations last Wednesday through Sunday, and there's a significant amount of new functionality for the public as a result of this site. So I just encourage you, I was going to try to cut and paste Carrie's blurb into my memo, but I encourage you to read her part of the newsletter about all these significant changes happening with Odyssey. It's a very quiet, but a very big deal around here. I'm very proud of our IT director, Starla Jones, and for her help with that process. So with that, commissioners, that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything else?
There will be, so the Kansas Office of Broadband Development has been doing a listening tour around the state. We got a Douglas County location added at kind of the last minute, so they'll be coming to Baldwin City on Monday. I only heard as of last night. And this Monday, the 10th at 12:30 at the Lumberyard Arts Center. So if people have things they want to talk about internet problems or issues, that would be a time to show up. Beyond that, I don't know what to expect out of that time, just that if Douglas County shows up, I think we can start finding out what next steps might look like.
I'll just share the a small update about my participation in some leadership networks with NACO, the National Association of Counties. Today I had the opportunity to participate in a webinar, which was sort of a webinar panel with a couple of other elected commissioners from elsewhere in the country. There was sort of a wrap up to the peer learning network that Bob and I got to participate in mostly last year, but also preceding that about really the intersection of criminal justice and behavioral health and trying to build better systems of care as a diversion from our criminal justice system. And so that was a cool opportunity to just highlight what we're doing in this county and where we've come from and where we're still headed and what that process has looked like. And then next week, NACO is having their Familiar Faces initiative, which I've been participating in. And you last heard me talk about when I went to Bexar County down in Texas and San Antonio in January, where their next site visit is based primarily in Johnson County next door next week. But they are coming also because many of our cohorts from elsewhere wanted to come see the TRC and see the campus here. So we'll get an opportunity to highlight Douglas County next week with some elected officials and county staff from around the country to see what it looks like in a community of our size, which is kind of a unique size compared to some of the other larger communities that are doing this kind of work. So I will look forward to having some more information to share with you about that after next week.
That's great. Thank you. I don't have anything, so we are adjourned.